All right, we're live. Welcome to the Global Phys Ed Voxcast. Thank you guys for joining us so much. I'm going to go around and I'm going to have you guys just introduce yourself. Bob, you want to start us off?
I'm Bob Knipe, currently a graduate student at the University of Texas in curriculum instruction, physical education, teacher education here in Austin, Texas.
Awesome. And Mariah, what about you?
I'm Mariah Foster. I teach online for an online international academy, have for over 8 years now, teaching physical education and health and wellness-based courses.
Awesome. So a little bit of background for our audience, the way we kind of got connected. Bob suggested that Mariah could come on and talk about some of this online learning, some of the distance learning that everybody is kind of either already doing or has been hinted to kind of start doing. And this is a new space for us, right? So as Bob said before the show, we're used to being physically active. We're used to being on our feet all day. And now as physical education and health teachers, we're being asked to do something completely different and learn new things. So Mariah, could you tell us a little bit about what you do and some of your background in education?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Texas at Austin and got my degree in education, physical education. And then I taught in brick and mortar for a year and a half before I transitioned to online school. Working in an online environment, which was a international environment, I had to change my way of thinking and how I approached getting my students active. Without being in the room with them, I had to go back to my kinesiology background and exercise science and start breaking that down into chunks for my students to understand in the best means so that I could help them learn to be healthy and active for a lifetime. So I did that for many years, and I had to change my way of thinking about being an educator from just, I see them, I can see the growth, to how do I best approach their learning. And through that, the variety of courses I taught and teach, from health, nutrition and wellness, physical activity, working with professional athletes that attend the school, and a variety of other courses, it really took more thinking and more thought process for each individual student than I did in the classroom, where I could have more of a blanketed, here's the lesson plan, and I can focus a couple minutes here and there on each student. So for me, taking my kinesiology background allowed me to grow as an online teacher, but it isn't a, hey, I can take this skill or I can take this lesson plan, because you don't really have a lesson plan. You have a general guide, but for each student, you have an individual lesson plan and an individual item that you might work on them with to help build that same skill and that same growth as you work with them with what they have in their environment. From a student that lived in Saudi Arabia to the UAE, and being a female couldn't go to a gym, and how do I help them do the same weight workout or circuit workout that my student in the US that has access to 7 different gyms within a 5-mile radius? What does that mean, and how does that change? So that was some of the stuff that I learned very early on and continue to learn from and continue to work on as I work with the athletes and the students that I have to help them grow.
So could you talk a little bit about the structure of your classes right now? So it seems like you have is it like a one-on-one type of thing? How are the classes structured?
So the classes are structured with different start dates throughout the fall and the spring. And within those start dates, you have a set number of courses that start, and each of those courses have X amount of students. So any given time throughout the year, I have between 200 and 300 students, and I would need to work with them. Now, those students could be in a variety of other courses. They might not be just in the PE course. They could be in the health course or the nutrition course or the anatomy course, but working with them each individually in their areas. And this involves working with them with the structured lessons that were in the course for them to complete with their materials, but also doing outreach and talking to them with Skype and using live sessions and using email and giving them very detailed feedback on the assignments they did submit with video recordings and text and different objects like that. So structured wise, there was set material that the students learned with set assignments to complete. But what I did was I supplement within that, and with that I grade and work with the students on how they best understand those materials. So one-on-one, yes, but also group setting. So live sessions could be from office hours that I held or hold, that students come that they can just ask a barrage of questions for any of the courses, or live sessions that are specific to a specific assignment or specific course, or one-on-one sessions that a student is really struggling and I need to offer them the best support for that specific assignment, and I offer a one-on-one session to a one-on-one recording that I do specifically for the student. They need the support, they don't have the time that works for them, so I may just hold that specific one-on-one session that I help just them, and that's it, and I do one little recording and send it to them. So it kind of flows in between one-on-one and group setting throughout the day. It never is really set one thing that you're doing.
So Mariah, you talked about your one-on-one sessions, and I think this is going to be an interesting thing for teachers to be able to do. We're used to teaching groups. Maybe we have some side meetings with students, but being able to visit with them. And I know a lot of teachers we get in this because we want to be with the kids. We really want to work with them. This might actually have an opportunity to build that relationship even closer. So I was curious, with your experience with one-on-one and kind of this office hours idea, what technology were you using to interface with the students?
So with the one-on-ones, it depended on the student. And I personally feel that I have a much better connection with my students in an online environment than I ever did in the classroom. And that will shock many teachers, and that will kind of be the like, oh my goodness, like what? But what it comes down to for me is I felt that the students were able to open up more, and students that were struggling didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I have to go pull the teacher aside and talk to them, and everybody's going to know that I'm having a hard time. So out of my 200 to 300 students at a time, I felt like I could talk to 150 to 200 of them, and that I knew what was going on in their lives, and I knew what was happening. And with that, it meant that the conversations that I had with them and the one-on-ones that I did do, it was more meaningful. So I have many students that I will Skype with, and that's their preferred communication. They like to do Skype conversations because it's quick and easy, and they can ask the questions. I can send them a recording. They can send me pictures. They can send me a recording, and I'm able to give them that quick, instantaneous feedback that they want. I have some that like to do Skype, but intermittent with Skype calls because something's just not making sense, and they want to do a quick video call. That works well. Some don't live in the same time zone, and we connect and we send emails and we still are able to talk, but they want that feedback, they want a recording, they want something, but it doesn't seem to always connect where we can do it live. So using a program like Zoom or Loom or any of those free quick recording softwares, doing a quick recording, sending them a quick little snippet or feedback, or them sending something to me, I can then give them the feedback, break it down, get it back to them, and help them that way. The school provides us with an online classroom. For most online schools, they use Blackboard Collaborate, which is a Blackboard-based system that allows for screen share, whiteboard tools, chat, recording. You can embed things, so you can use that as a tool. So those were where my live sessions and my one-on-ones sometimes took place. But I prefer to use a lot of the other tools available. So using Teams for Office 365 was a great tool, but I also used Sway. It's a live interactive PowerPoint that allowed me to make a generic here's generic workouts for everybody based off of specific areas. So cardio, core, circuit training. I had one student, actually multiple students, that loved jumping on a trampoline. So I had to go make workouts for trampoline, and I built an entire sway that fit for those students. And those were ways that I could send it to them. They could then call me, text me, send me an email, ask questions, and I could support them. So with that, using the tools that are out there, there are so many tools that allow you to work within the system, but also support the students that best fit them.
So Mariah, you mentioned relationship building being a big part of what you do, and I think as a physical education teacher, we value that time that we spend face to face with our students, and I think that's a big part of what we do as physical education teachers. What tips would you have for teachers who are, going into this distance learning realm? That want to maintain some of those relationships, and as you said, maybe even build upon what the relationships that they've created from their classrooms.
My best recommendation for that is listen to your students. A lot of times when you're in the classroom, yes, you do know what's going on in the students' lives. You know about some of the stuff they do outside of the classroom. But sometimes it doesn't always connect. It doesn't always go, oh, they also do archery professionally, or they do this. So taking the time to make those connections of, yes, they are part of this. How is that going? How are they handling not being able to do this one thing that means something to them? When I was online, it's a lot of connecting to, okay, they can still do this, or maybe they got injured. What are they doing now? And in this type of scenario where we're not sure when things are going to start back up or what's going on, using that to go, hey, I know you're really into football. How are you handling that you can't do some of your football training? Or, you are a basketball player and now you do this. Or the students that aren't maybe highly sports fanatics and they like to go on the walks, or maybe they like to go to that comic book store. Talking to them about what type of things are they doing now, and how are they still finding the little things that mean to them the joy. Where many of us physical education teachers find the joy in being active and helping these students be healthy for a lifetime, our students find the joy in other ways, and finding that joy and knowing how to connect that in. So a really good example was, I had a student, because I told all my students that I rowed. I was a rower in college. I'm still deeply involved in the sport of rowing. And I had a student that lived in Germany, and she reached out to me and said, I've never tried rowing before, but there is a very big rowing team down at the bottom of the hill from my house. And I went and tried it, and I love it. And to this day, she still rows. She still sends me information about the events that she's competed in and how she's done. But it took me sharing one little small part of my life that has been part of my life for 20 years for her to go, I want to give that a try. And it's those little moments that in online, you might help a student find that joy, or that little piece, that little kernel for them to be able to blossom and to grow. And in today's environment, taking that to, you like basketball, how can we incorporate that inside the house while you're social distancing? How can you practice some of those skills? And using that type of technique is going to be huge.
So do you think that your philosophy of teaching has changed since you went from, being in the gym, being a physical education teacher, to distance learning? And if so, how has it changed?
I think it changed drastically. I had some really great instructors at the University of Texas, and we learned a lot of different sports and a lot of different ways of working with our students at different levels and taking that knowledge, but then having to shift it to an online environment, I had to rethink how I thought. And my philosophy had always been, I want the best for the students. I want them to be healthy and active. But I had to change that to be more of an individual, healthy and active. And my philosophy has always been, well, meet the students where you can, try to give them a diversified learning, but in online, it is more than just diversifying the learning. It is individualized. How are they going to best learn? Is it a student that you need to write everything out step by step by step? Or is it a student that is going to take the recording that you've given them and just go? So for me, I've always stuck behind healthy and active for a lifetime, but with that, I've added the joy in being healthy and active for a lifetime. It isn't just I'm getting out, I'm being active, I'm moving my body. It is I find the joy in what I'm doing, and that's why I continue doing it. From the students that I've had that work on farms, that building in extra workouts was very difficult, but working with them to understand that hauling the hay bales and going out and mucking the stalls were workouts, and how we could add bits and pieces to that to help strengthen them so they could do a better job for their livelihood. To the students that are athletes training for Olympics or national events at a professional sports school that come to us for an education piece, that yes, you do this for everything, but where's the joy in the activity you do? Yeah. Do you go out to the tennis courts and you play because you have to, because your coach tells you you have to, or do you enjoy what you're doing, and do you enjoy taking that 30 minutes to do a yoga break to recenter and to find the joy in the activity? So it doesn't sound like a big change, but really for me, mentally, it was a huge change from just being active to the joy in being active.
Yeah, I think that's huge, and I think you know, being online and seeing some of the posts that people have been recently posting, especially with this distance learning idea coming around, I think it sort of forces us to refocus and look at what our priorities could be or should be, and I think that's one that continues to pop up. Where is your joy? And then figuring out how to, as you said, how to personalize these activities to best maximize that the learning and the enjoyment that comes out of it. Because as you said, we want our kids to be physically active for a lifetime, and that rarely happens if they're forced to do something. So I am curious to see how this sort of refocuses things or puts things in line for the physical education world, especially for maybe some of those programs that do have sort of a rigid sort of curriculum, and you know, this is how we do this unit on this day, this is how we do this unit on that day, and lack sort of that differentiation. Could you talk a little bit about that? And I mean, it would be tough, I think, to have an individual plan for, like you said, 200 to 300 students. So how do you do that? How do you manage everybody sort of having either, you know, having an individual perspective to what they're doing and finding their own personal and individual joy, but at the same time sticking to some sort of maybe a negotiated curriculum, but nevertheless some sort of curriculum or some sort of guidelines?
Yeah, so I will state, not every student is going to succeed online or in distance learning. That is just how it is. I have had many students that online learning for them is never going to work and it's never going to succeed. And I'm pretty sure most teachers out there can think of a few students that go, yeah, it's not, because I need to be there with them to help them to push them to work with them. But there is a huge amount of students and a huge majority of students that will succeed in online learning. And creating those lesson plans and those individualized programs can seem very daunting. But where I come at it from is start with the basics. We know what we want our students to learn. We know that we have general guidelines depending on the state that you live in, that across the year, those are the types of things that you want them to be able to know or to learn.
Yeah.
Whether it's your kindergartners that can hop, skip, leap, and jump, to your high school students that, okay, maybe you're teaching them how to swing a bat and either you taught them baseball, softball, or cricket, doesn't really matter. You're still working on that hand-eye coordination. The same applies to online. So taking the base general, like, I need them to work on hand-eye coordination, I need them to work on cardio, and I need them to work on strength training, you have to boil it down to those just general terms. From there, you're able to then create different choose your own adventure paths for your students. Using the sway, using some of the different material, I was able to build a choose your own adventure. So telling my students, okay, this week I need you to focus on your cardio, and listing out a variety of different cardio-based workouts that I could do, from running, walking, jogging, yoga, Pilates, circuit training, whatever it might be, listing it out for them to then be able to select and work on that. It isn't me saying, okay, we're doing cardio, so we're only going to work on running and we're going to work on the mile run. That doesn't do anything for most of the students. Most of them go, I have to run.
Right.
And for them, that just sounds horrendous. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, oh dear goodness, I hate this. But the same applies to your weight training or your hand-eye coordination. I'm pretty sure both of you and many of the teachers that might listen to this can think of 10 or 12 different items that you can do to work on hand-eye coordination that isn't just baseball and softball. So
Right.
working on those, listing those out, and giving them the option to choose, here's the activity, here's what we're focusing on, here's the variety of things you can do, and the material you might need for each of these. You aren't putting in more work. All you're doing is differentiating it to fit that student so that you can then work with them. Where somebody might choose, I have a tennis ball and I have a wall, and I'm going to work on my hand-eye coordination and the distance I stand and how I throw the ball. They're working on a variety of different skills, both mathematical, both thinking about the different throws, the velocity that they're throwing. You start adding in these other pieces that we don't always think about when we have those structured plans of, okay, this week we're focusing on baseball, and here's the bat, here's the ball, here's the stance we need to do. We don't always think past that. So that would be my recommendation and my thought is look at a choose your own adventure. Boil it down to what your focus is and what could happen within that moment.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm hearing is like moving from this doing to learning. And as teachers, we're always in the learning, but the kids might not be getting that. And I think one of the things that you're doing is helping the kids to see that and be part of that and be able to have like a little more meaning attached to the movements that they're doing. Throughout what you were talking about, I keep thinking of like standard 5, right? How does the student come to value it? You talked about joy. How do they attach that and make meaning of it? I'm curious, one of the outcomes that we have is to be able to be active with others. We find joy a lot of times in being active by engaging with other people, and it may be the actual motivating factor to get people out there or to continue being active. So I'm curious, within the curriculum that you provide, is that something that you try to encourage them to do? I know in our current situation, we're going to actually be discouraging that. But I'm just curious, as kind of a side note, we have our objective here to kind of flush this out for teachers. But I'm just curious about when you're teaching, how do we include that social aspect at the end of this? Say coronavirus is lifted, we do not have to distance ourselves. How would we do that in an online situation?
So the first thing I'm going to address is, even with the situation we're in, distancing isn't distancing, and being socially active is working out with the family members that you might be with.
Yep.
And that is something that I push is, hey, you're struggling with getting out and getting moving. Prior to going to bed, ask everybody in the family that's there, hey, can we do 5 minutes of a family stretch and just talk? Let's go for a 5-minute walk or a 10-minute walk. And with us being in socially distanced areas, many students are still going to be surrounded by their family and their people within the homes that they might live. And using that as a social interaction is huge and a key point.
Yep.
With that, you also still have the social interaction of their classmates. And that's going to sound odd, but you can do mini discussions. You can do post pin boards. One of the recommendations I sent is kind of a digital corkboard. And with that, you can have the students send in or post the workouts they've done, and they can see what the classmates have done. Whether it's a cumulative at the end of the week saying, okay, I went for 5 runs and I did yoga 3 days out of the week and I am feeling great, to, I really struggled to get out and go active at all this week. Having them do that, having them share the highs and the lows with their classmates in a discussion forum, in a virtual corkboard, in a email that you blast to all the students for that specific class, they still can do a lot. Whether it's you create a Skype group, and that is each of the different student groups, whether it's you collect that information and you share, this class is working on this and people are really doing well. What are your suggestions for them when they're struggling to interact or to find the motivation to keep going? So you don't lose the distance between the people, it is just changed. It isn't that same, we're in the classroom, I throw to you, you throw to me. It is, okay, so how do I still throw to you even though you might be 2 states away? How do I still get that motivation to you to do the same activity as me? With live lessons, having video on for everybody, working out together, there are ways to still connect without being in the same space.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought that up because I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that the other day. We've been out of school for a week and a half now, and for me, I feel like I want to get out a little bit, And last night, my family and I went for a bike ride, and that was really fun, and it was something that we needed. We all kind of were feeling stressed out, and we're kind of stuck on this compound, right? And within the compound, there's a lot of different families that are kind of quarantined, and so you see that, and it's a constant reminder, and it's stressful, and you don't necessarily realize it, but it is. And so getting out and getting a little exercise as a family that helped to relieve some of that stress. And then another thing that really helps me is I've had a couple of these podcasts where we get a group together and we talk about whatever the issues might be. And obviously right now it's the coronavirus, and for whatever reason, it motivates me and it energizes me just to know that everybody that I'm talking to is kind of in the same boat. And so that's why I find these podcasts kind of I want to release more of these types of podcasts so that people can listen and be part of this conversation. And I know sometimes when I listen to a good conversation in a podcast, I feel like I'm sort of part of that conversation, and it makes me feel like I'm a part of it, right? And so hopefully we can kind of share that with physical education and health teachers out there, that let them know that they're not alone. We're all in this situation together. If anybody needs anything, you know, it's just we're just a tweet away, sort of, so to speak. And we can create these sort of digital communities to support each other. And I think that's super important. And it does work. You know, for me in my life, it does work. Seeing Bob, you know, I haven't talked to Bob for a long time, but just seeing his face, it's like, hey, that's my buddy Bob, you know? So yeah, I love that you brought that up. Even though we're doing this social distancing, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be isolated.
Yeah,
Well, and
Jorge.
I will build off of that, saying, you know, the students in your classroom that are buddies. You know who gets along with who.
Hmm.
So being the mediator for them to still be in contact and still share the growth and the lows that they're having with their activity can be a world of a difference to them, whether they're feeling isolated and tired of their family and want to know how their friends are doing.
Yeah.
To have them do those communication can be a life-changing event for them to stay focused and to stay moving.
So I think Mariah, you hit on like students to students. Jorge, I think you talked about like phys ed colleagues to phys ed colleagues. And the other thing that we have to remember is that we're used to going into schools and seeing our other teacher peers. And so like Jorge saying, how do we use social media to kind of create that kind of environment? And I think that's what you're saying, is we benefit from social media in that way, and that we're able to connect with people and not feel isolated. We tend to feel like that in the school, because we're out in the gym and it's hard to relate to what we do. So we find that here. And so I think one of the outcomes I think so far I'm hearing is from Mariah saying, hey, you know, we actually might be more connected to our students, and the students might have a chance to be more connected to each other in more meaningful ways, where they're actually sharing at a deeper level. And then the same thing, I think some of the benefits that people like us have experienced here on social media, being connected in this way as phys ed colleagues, that may spread. It may be an outcome of this, a little bit of a blessing from what we're going through, and that we may solidify some new relationships and maybe go a little bit deeper with others.
Yes, and I will say, in the time that I've taught online, I have met one of my coworkers in over 8 years. I have met one coworker in person,
Wow.
but I have extremely close connections with coworkers that live in Arizona and Florida, to the point that I know what's going on in their kids' lives. We talk about things. We know what's going on with each other's health. I feel connected with them as friends more than just coworkers.
Right.
We talk daily. We Skype each other. We talk about the highs and lows of our students, and they teach other subjects. They teach business courses and they teach art and music courses, yet the connection that we have doesn't limit us to just being people that pass in the hallway.
Right.
And I think that's something that, when you're moving to distance learning in an uncertain time, is know that your coworkers are there, whether the same school, whether a different school, whether they're in the same country or not. They're there to help you, whether it's a high and a low, a struggle with a student. They can be that sounding board. They can, okay, you're struggling with this, or you're trying to come up with a workout for this. Have you tried this? Or here's a resource. Skype, Facebook Messenger, Twitter, all of the different social media that we might think about, Instagram, is there for us to also use as a educator to educator. And we can use it as a place to vent. We can use it as a place to have those resources and feel supported. So it isn't just about the students moving to this, it's also about the educators and how they can find the connections with their fellow teachers of same subject or different subjects.
Yeah, so Mariah, you're talking about like kind of the new lifestyle, right? And I mentioned earlier, like kind of going into school, you have a structured day, and now we're moving into this environment where it's a little more freeform, right? We're waking up, we're going to stay at home. And so I know from my personal experience, I went from teaching pre-K through fifth for 8 years to working from home doing teacher training. And I know there was a huge transition for me, just trying to figure out space where I get into that mental space of working, and then blocking off times of day. So those different strategies on like, how do we be a teacher that's not in a school? I mean, think about it. If we're teachers, like kind of like how we think about athletes, if you're a basketball player and they're retiring and they're 30 years old, they've done that for their whole life. As teachers, I mean, we literally have done this since what, we're 4 years old. And so not being in that school kind of routine, can maybe, we can all speak to this, but Mariah, if you want to start, just like, how have you found some strategies to be productive and stay on track?
The biggest thing is it's hard to leave work at work. And with that, you have to build your timeline. When I first transitioned to online teaching, one of the best things that I ever got from one of our trainings was a teacher that said, put in your calendar when you're going to do your laundry. Put in your calendar when you're going to eat your lunch. And to me, at first, I was like, why would I do that? That just sounds ridiculous. I can take a 5-minute break and go throw the laundry, and it's fine. But as I continued to work online, I really found that, yes, you do need to put in that 15-minute break to go put your laundry away, or that 10-minute break to take a stretch, because it is very easy to get pulled into the work and to just get lost in it.
Yep.
So building in, I start at this time, whether my students are online or not yet, I have a start time and I have an end time. And when my end time hits, unless there is something emergent, I will not go back to the computer. I will not check. I won't go to it. Is very key, because you need to have those breaks. This is when I start. This is when I end. And here's where I'm taking a lunch or a break between classes. You have to build in that structure for yourself. So for me, I built in structure of, I am working on emails from this time to this time. I will check Skype throughout the day, but I focus on new outreach to students for this time to this time. I grade, and grading was a huge part of it because of the detailed feedback I gave or the recordings that I gave. I had a huge chunk that was focused on grading. So I had to structure it each day like that. And there was days that all I did was grade, or all I did was outreach, because that was how I needed to structure to best fit my students and where I was at. So yes, online you don't have the same structure of period 1, period 2, period 3, but you do have the structure of saying, okay, I'm going to focus on my period 1 students, or I'm going to focus on responding to the emails that have come in, and structuring it in our calendars, because many of us, we live and die by our calendars, whether it's a Google Calendar, an Outlook calendar. It tells us everything we need to know. So take the time to feel out what your day is. Normally I'm at work by 7. Does that mean I start at 7, or do I take a few extra minutes to chat with my coworkers? So is it I get online at this time, I do a quick chat with some of my coworkers, and then I dive in by 7:30, or am I online at 8? Am I off by 3? Or am I going to maybe shift my day to better meet some of the parents that might still be going to work, or that have those questions that might not be able to reach out a 9 to 5? What does it fit? And so building that into your schedule and the structure that you're now going to have to find for yourself is going to be key for your sanity. And that sounds very dramatic, but it really is the case, because if you don't, you will find that you're going to work 80 hours or more a week, that you are going to get sucked into it to find the next thing that might help the student. Or, I'm building out this list of workouts and I've got just 2 more that I want to get in, and but did I find this one? So finding the times that fit and that works for you is going to be a key to it. Whether it's searching for those workouts that are, hey, you can do this workout while you watch this TV show or this movie, or building a new one because you haven't found one yet. Whatever it is structure that into your day and know that your start and end times are key.
One of the things that helped me as I transitioned, because I was really nervous about this transition, because I tend to not be very organized, but I agree with you. You tend to start relying more on your calendar because that becomes the new structure. And so one of the things that helped me to do this was an app called, well, it's actually a software, online-based software. It's called Calendly, like calendar, but at the end you kind of take off the ending there and put ly, Calendly. And what's great about this app is it takes your current calendars, say Google Calendar, and you plug that into this Calendly, and it takes that and it blocks off times that have already been slotted for, and it provides opportunities for people to slot in. So I was thinking about your office hours, whether it's with students or with parents or with other teachers. You can create these office hour blocks that maybe have 15-minute chunks if you want them, or 30 minutes, or even 5 minute. So you develop these different appointments that people can sign up for, and you send a time block, right? So you're saying I work from 8 to 5. You could then have an 8 to 5, but if you had already scheduled something for the person who's viewing it, the consumer, they won't see that time as available. So it's like kind of having your own personal assistant. And so, yeah, Calendly was great because, you go through this like doodle poll, who's available when, or you go to this back and forth emails, and you're 5 emails in, you still haven't even found a time to meet. So Calendly was a great way to kind of empower the consumer, whether it's the student, parent, etc., for them to decide what's best for them, and you don't have to really worry about it. What's cool about that, once they do sign up, it puts it on your calendar and it puts it on their calendar and takes care of the reminders for you. So really cool tool, Calendly. For those of you who are transitioning to this lifestyle, it could be a real time saver for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a good tip. And, I'll take that a step further. I was reading the book Atomic Habits. Have you read that one?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Pretty good book. And one of the things that stuck out to me was when they were talking about having specific places for specific things.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I'm noticing now that I'm not in the gym and I'm at home all day is that I have my phone on me all day long. And the phone, it's great, right? Because it can do everything. But it's horrible because it does everything. And so I have this like constant little stressor in my pocket, right? That's telling me like I get a notification, I have to respond to this, and I get an email, and I got a text, and I got to do this. And it's this constant little stressor that's in my pocket just reminding me that I'm always connected, I'm always connected, I'm always connected. And so I need to do a better job. I definitely need to do a better job of balancing all that stuff and finding a time, like you guys were saying, like finding a time when I'm replying to emails, finding a time when we're doing a lot on Seesaw, when I'm replying to my Seesaw posts, finding a time when I'm online, maybe getting on Twitter, doing those things, that I'm I can balance everything so that I'm not constantly there's not this like little hum of stress all day long, because it piles up, right? There's no way to like to stop it, and I need to find a better way to stop it.
Yeah, so it
Yeah,
sounds
and
like
I will say, go ahead, Bob.
we all have some similar personalities where we're trying to slow ourselves down. And so, yeah, trying to find that schedule that allows for that. I think some people might have the opposite. They might need the schedule to stay motivated on track and not distracted.
It's a
So yeah,
balance, though. It's a balance, right? Like you
yep,
can't always be there because you're going to get burned out.
yep.
But I'm the same way. But I need something to push me. There's a little push every now and then, something to motivate me. And if I don't have that, then it's the opposite effect, right? So finding the balance is crucial. Finding that balance is really important.
And building it in that responses aren't going to be immediate sounds small, but will be huge. You think about it in the sense of, oh, well, my phone's right here and I got the notification that I got an email, so I guess I should just respond to this email. And you start building it in that if somebody responds to you, they expect a response within moments. Yeah. So with setting the blocks of time, building it in that responses aren't going to be immediate, that it might take 24 hours for a response, but allowing them to feel comfortable that, okay, you didn't forget about me is more than okay. And that I think can be a very huge piece.
Yeah, I think you're speaking to like the expectations of this whole process. I think the expectations that you have, or for your students, or your students should have for you, there's some things that are kind of set there. Where in this new territory where we're going from live to digital, is I think it's even more important to set, okay, hey, I know we all want to be here. We want to be at the highest point we can be with this, but hey, we're mid-year and we're all learning at the same point. So curving that expectation, I think, for you're saying for the student, so they're not anticipating an immediate response, but also that for each other and for other teachers and for ourselves, is how do we allow ourselves to just be respectful of our own learning, right? That it's going to take some time for us to figure this out, and that we don't have to go 60 hours, 80 hours a week to figure this out. That what we're going to get done in a 40 to 50 hour week, it is going to be what it's going to be, and we're going to have to be okay with that, and it's not going to be perfect. And I know that's going to be especially hard for those teachers who have been at it 10, 15, 20 years, who have dialed in their program and expected the best of themselves, and are trying to live up to that in 2 days. Okay, now digital learning environment, it's 100% and go. I think we have to make sure that we're not perpetuating the idea within the community that should be the aspiration. It should be that we're in survival mode and we're going to survive this together. Yes, we're going to try to come up with some cool, innovative ideas, and yes, there are going to be some really good benefits on the other end, a lot of good learning, but perfection definitely not even close to what we should be shooting for.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say, remember that a weekend is a weekend. Whether your weekend will be Tuesday, Wednesday, whether your weekend is Saturday, Sunday, you need to make sure that you take the time to unplug at least 2 days out of the week. And for many people that are brick and mortar are going to go, well, that's going to be easy. But the minute you start getting into this distance learning and the digital space, it makes it very hard. And you might not finish everything in a week, and you feel, oh, well, I have this time on Saturday that I hadn't blocked out for anything. It's okay. I can go sit down and spend a couple hours on it. You need to make sure that you take the time to focus on yourself as well. It's not just about the students and how the students are doing. It is also about you and where your health and mental health is in this transition time.
Yeah, right. To be that role model, to literally model what this lifestyle is going to need to look like for however long it lasts, both on the mental side, right? That mental health and physical, staying active ourselves, living it out. And like you're saying, that you were able to use your rowing opportunity to inspire a student. And I'm hoping that's going to be the same thing for us, is how do we find ways that we are living the lifestyle out in this current situation that we can share with our students. You spoke to being on break, like, so we're on spring break right now, and it's kind of like this feeling of guilt, right? It's like, wow, there's this massive thing I'm going to have to tackle, but I earned it. I earned the spring break, and so like giving yourself that space is going to be important. But then how do we figure out how to stay active with the gyms closing, like you were mentioning earlier with your students, or not being able to go to basketball practice or whatever team they're a part of. So as we learn to figure it out, with Jorge's example earlier of being able to go bike riding with his family. So finding those things that are working for us and being able to help our students going to be crucial. So modeling that, what were we thinking? How did we benefit from it? Not just I went bike riding, right? Because that's not what's going to add to the standard 5, the value of it all. How do they attach value when we're sharing those examples of how we're learning to live this lifestyle? For me, I've been running consistently, but I've been pushing into running hard as we move into this kind of social isolation, because I know that my gym's going to eventually close. Yeah. And so I'm going to pick up my running a lot.
Well, and it's using the tools that are in our environment. Think about that can of peas, or that, I got a baby brother. Maybe I pick up and do squats with the baby brother. Whatever it is there are a variety of options for us that aren't just a specific weight or a specific exercise equipment. Maybe they live in an apartment that has stairs. Well, okay, go and do 5 sets of stairs. Whether you walk them, lunge them, run them, there are those options that we don't always think about, and it doesn't mean that they need to buy the best or the most. It maybe it is, it's going for a run or going for a bike ride, or using the stairs in the apartment complex, and changing the way of everything can be a workout piece of equipment is going to be part of this change when people might not have access to what they are used to, whether it's a gym, whether it's a basketball practice, a football practice, a rowing team, whatever it can be.
Yeah, and I think I think that kind of speaks also to that sort of play mentality, right? Where you can find a fun thing to do almost everywhere. Like you just gotta keep your eyes open for it. And Becky Fulmer, she recently tweeted out this really cool document, and I'll put it in the show notes so everybody can check it out and add to it if you have any ideas. But she had all these. So it's basically a Google sheet, and on the bottom it has all these tabs, and it has all these different um, different stuff that you would find around your house, like trash can. Towels, a rug, I mean, whatever. And then people have added ideas that you can do and videos associated with them. So either people have made them or found videos online and put them in there. And it's things that you can do around your house with everyday stuff. And I thought that was brilliant because some people have been quarantined, right? Some people, well, I'm in Saudi Arabia, right? And some people are stuck in their houses and they don't have anywhere to go. Like they literally can't go anywhere. um, and so just having this mindset of keeping your options open and being able to either work out or get some kind of activity or even play with the stuff around you, I think is huge.
Yeah, for sure. I remember growing up, my generation, we might remember pipe works. It was a way of kind of building your own things, and we would make those into like tunnels and things around our house to make little obstacle courses. And
Yeah,
those are
yeah.
some of the best memories I have is playing with my family in our house, and not imagining like how much activity I was getting. Right at the time, that didn't matter to me,
Hmm.
but the excitement, the timing of the course, and changing it up and adding new obstacles and
Yeah, yeah.
parts of it. Yeah, it's going to be interesting as we go through this to see how people have dealt with it. As a budding researcher, there's so many questions that are coming to mind, and trying to figure out where to go with it, because there's just so much cool things that are going to happen from this, and how do we capture that, and how do we tell those stories, and hear from people who
Hmm.
are taking really unique pathways to enjoy life.
Hey, Mariah, you still there? Did we lose Mariah?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I thought, I'm sorry. I thought we lost you for a second there. So I did want to ask you, before you had mentioned keeping cultures in mind and keeping different environments in mind. And like I said, I'm in Saudi Arabia, and there's definitely a different culture here. And in addition to that, when it starts warming up, it gets really, really hot. So how do you manage that? How do you deal with some of the cultural norms that are different from place to place, as well as environments when you're thinking about distance learning or online learning?
The biggest thing is, once I gained a student in a different location or from a different culture, I took the time to research and to figure out whether it's a student from Saudi Arabia or the UAE. I had a huge number of students from UAE, and each part of UAE is slightly different.
Hmm.
But working with some of the females who are in more conservative families, that truly they're not allowed outside without a male escort from X time to X time,
Right.
or they can't go to a gym, or they can't be uncovered outside of their home.
Hmm.
So working with them in high heat of summer was very different than working with some of the males.
Hmm.
So taking the time to work with them and talk to them, what does your day look like? So you do a lot of chores, or you've done grocery shopping and now you're putting away items. So working with them to find those workouts of, okay, so you have a can of beans or you have some jugs of juice. Let's build a workout there. You live on the 15th floor. Are you able to walk up and down the stairs? Yes. okay, let's build a workout there. So I took the time to work individually with my students, but it also applies within wherever you are. Um, Taking the time to look at the culture, whether it's a religious based or a family with political different means, or a cultural aspect that they're not allowed to do certain things. Respect what they tell you, respect what they give you, and work with them. It's the same thing with many of us that have taught health, that we have students that aren't going to learn about sexual education or reproductive health. That's fine. That could be a cultural thing. It could be a parents with certain perspectives thing, whatever it might be. We respect it. Same thing with the physical activity. Respect what they tell you and work with them to find out what they can do or what they do in a day, so that you can build upon that. From students that may live in rural Georgia that, they don't really have much, but they got some hills and they like to be outside. So work with them on different climbing techniques, whether it's climbing some hills or some rocks, or doing some runs or some different strengthening exercises that's going to help them with that, versus a student that might live in UAE that, they want to work on their cardio and feel like they're more toned or feel better about themselves. And how do you do circuits with a jug of juice and some stairs, and that's all you've got? So you look at the calisthenics and you look at what they are able to do. So it does sound like a lot, but when you build out a repertoire of kind of a choose your own adventure of activities, you find that it isn't. It is easy to go, okay, so you were working on weightlifting, great, and you have these types of things. You can then look at your kind of back pocket, that skills that you've built out, go, okay, so weightlifting, okay, they don't have any materials, okay, so we're looking more calisthenics or homegrown activities. Okay, so I have this set of things. Send them those videos, send them those links, send them those workout plans, and it really will make a difference. So building out what's best going to fit you is going to be key to best fit your students.
Awesome.
Mariah, thinking about like the method of that. So from what it sounds like, is this a conversation that you're having with them, or do you use like any screening tools, like a survey or a form to kind of gather some pre-information, or is it pretty much just one-on-one conversations?
It's a mix of everything. I always do a screening when they first start the course. Now, they're not required to do it. It's kind of like a gain a couple extra credit points by completing this, and some students will and some students won't. But it helps to better understand where they're at. Whether it's they love to be active, whether it's they hate being active, whether it's I'm in a wheelchair and I can't do much more than a couple of my physical stretches that I have to do for PT. So it's finding out more about them. Now, the students that don't complete it, it's doing the little bit of outreach saying, hey, you submitted your first assignment and I see that you did a lot of running. Do you like running? Can I help you with some of your running techniques? Are you noticing things? Or, all you did was you did some stretches and some yoga that was from the course. Do you need help finding something that's going to push you a little bit? So it is a little bit of that one-on-one. It's a little bit of the surveys. And it's, for me, I always post in my courses before they start. I get it all set up. I post all of the workouts. I post the choose your own adventures of, are you looking for weightlifting ideas? And I list them out for them. I have it set up in a way so that they can click it and click through and save those links or save those workouts, whether it's a paper-based one or a video or something they can follow along, or a website that has things that are going to help them. The platform that the school uses is D2L, which is Desire to Learn, and it allows for easy modification from the teacher. Now, most of the teachers that are going to make the switch from brick and mortar to distance in this time aren't going to have a platform set. So I do recommend creating a free Google Classroom that you can host this information. Teachers can create free Google Classrooms and start adding students if their school approves of it, and building out a platform that they can host the workouts, whether it's sectioning on the side that's a weightlifting section that has all the weight workouts that somebody might pick from, or a cardio, or however they want to do it. It can be a really great tool for them to store that information and have it ready. Or if it's a Google Drive account that they create, I recommend, if the school doesn't have an online platform, that the teacher doesn't use their personal email or anything like that, that if they need to create a free Gmail account to create these platforms that will best fit for their school, that it's very clearly, it is a school-based account. Just like many of us are told, don't add students on social media unless it's a school account. Don't let them see some of the stuff that you do outside of the classroom. Same thing applies. You don't want that I don't want to call it contamination, but it's that crossing of your personal life and your school life. It is, as we talked about, having that distance and that little bit of a barrier to make sure that you have your time. So using those tools to best be able to supply to the students is going to be important.
Yep, I think that's awesome advice. Keeping that virtual social distance, I think is important too. You got to have your private life too. So I think that is a really, really good advice. Okay, so I know we're at the end of the hour here. So I did want to get everybody's information. If anybody wanted to continue the conversation, where would be the best way to get a hold of you, Mariah?
So probably is going to be email for me. The best email to reach me at is mariahkmfoster@gmail.com. And through that, I can respond to stuff. I know I sent Bob a bunch of resources that I'm pretty sure he'll post and get out as well, but I'm here to help or answer questions. I know it's a scary time, but it's part of, we're all here together.
And Bob, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so two ways. One, through Twitter at KnipeR1, my last name KNIPER1. And same thing for Gmail, KnipeR1@gmail.com.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming on the show. I would like to have more of these to get some ideas out there for distance learning. I know everybody's kind of in the same area, and thinking about this distance learning thing. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate all the advice. And Bob, if you want to pass along some of those resources, I can share them out as well. So thank you guys for coming on the show, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mariah.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful day.